Noisatake nalamaka sireniniki. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Soratake soreniniameka. It's such a pleasure to be here with you one more time. Soratake soreniniameka. And opening up the space for this wonderful transmission in the form of episode. Soratake soreniniameki seretikanamaka. In today's episode, we're talking about the cracking phase of the awakening process, which it honestly super duper fascinates me. And I'm in my 4th year of this happening. So the cracking, it happened in 2018, towards the end of 2018, and it was very different of how it is here. But before we get there, so let's go back into like, what am I actually talking about? So part of the awakening process, is realizing that you're not the physical body, and the physical body actually has its own intelligence and it's its own being. And so part of it is to work in unison with the physical body, as in best friends, Imagine a best friend that you had all along, but you didn't even realize it was your best friend until, let's call it, some kind of something happened in your life. And then it makes you realize like, wow, you've been here all along for me. Thank you. This is kind of like the same relationship with the physical body. Like it's been there all along. It's carried you through all your years, through everything that you have gone through. It's really helped you to continue to go at times, even when you think you couldn't, So think about the moments where you thought that you couldn't keep going and there was something inside of you that guided you. Yes, for sure, is part of like your inner guidance, meaning the core of your being, but at the same time it's the physical body, as in the physical body, and saying like, I got you. There have been moments in my life where I didn't even think I could actually walk, or maybe I was like too depressed in the moment and having the sensation of like, I don't even know how I'm walking, but I'm walking. It's like something else is like helping me walk. And it was in those instances that my physical body was telling me, I got you, it's cool, it's really cool. However, most of us live with this idea that we are the physical body. So therefore, we decide how we want to feed it. We decide if we want to do exercise or not, or over exercise, or not even do anything, or like watch TV and just chill in the couch and whatever else that we do. However, it's very important to keep it active, right? It just really depends of like the needs of the physical body. It's just like, you have your own needs in partnership or with your friends, When I talk about partnership, I don't just mean like a romantic relationship, but like the connection with some people. Maybe at times you need a space from others, So it's like a similar relationship to the physical body. And so part of the awakening process, when the energy begins to, or continues, let's say, because it's in constant movement, this awakening process is not just, it really just started with the Kundalini awakening, for example, right? Your body has been preparing for that rise of the energy in the form of whether you were already meditating or exercising or taking care of yourself or doing affirmations, or perhaps something very traumatic happened, like a near-death life experience. So this is what it really happens during all that process, when the energy moves up and is cleansing even deeper the chakras, and at the same time your entire system. You're being more open, you're being more expressive. There's more of like these emotions and like traumas that happen to you that continue to rise up, for you to put a piece with that, for you to alchemize it, meaning for you to integrate it back into you and not separate it. It's kind of like what the integration process is, that it's a part of you that continuously lived in this trauma is now back in you and safe, back in the present moment with your current consciousness. So the more that the body continues to cleanse itself, the energy continues to cleanse you, and etc., the more you get in tune with your truth. And part of the truth is knowing that the physical body is alive, knowing that the physical body has something to guide you, something to give you, something to contribute to your journey. Okay, so it comes into a part where you begin to go deeper into the process, and that's the cracking. At times it could start with like feeling like something is pulling the arms back in order to rearrange the shoulders and putting the shoulders back in balance. And then little by little, it really is like crack. Like, you know, when you crack your your fingers, it's a very similar thing, as in like very similar sound. But what is happening here is that the crack is releasing tension for the body to continue to awaken itself. So see it as the seed, right? So when we put a seed into the earth, it's just like this tiny, beautiful thing. So it's in darkness. It's in darkness. It's around the earth. It's warm, kind of like in the womb, you know, it's like very warm. And then you put water in it, you're feeding it, you're giving it love, maybe you're talking to it. And little by little, by the warmth of the earth, but also feeding itself with the water that you've given it, or the water that comes from the rain, then it begins to, like, in a way, grow. And maybe like the insights begin to like crack through the seed, through the shell, right? It's very similar to the cracking motion of your body. So first, the body, prior to the race of the Kundalini energy, it felt that it was around darkness, and it needed the warmth of you. It needed the warmth of you to feel safe, to nurture it, you know? So like you began to give yourself some love and appreciation, and do having better ways of living your life, maybe different practices, mindfulness, you know? So like all these things began to like warm it and warm it and warm it. And then it felt that connection, because it's not that it ever left, you know, it felt that connection. And the more that it felt the connection, it began so strong, and the energy began to rise. And then it found those barriers around itself, the darkness, right? And it began to crack through it. So visualize like literally a plant becoming a tree, right? So like it becomes from a seed, and it cracks through the shell of the seed, and then it begins to move, it begins to grow, as in like the roots get very, very deep, but then there's all these things that rise up, and it's kind of like moving like this, you know. If you're watching the video, it's actually kind of fun. If you're just listening, you know, just like visualize, like how would you visualize the tree coming into life, right? So like the trunk at the beginning is not something massive, it's very tiny, or maybe just this tiny little like string-like thing, you know. So it's like doing these things, but like so the body is like trying to find itself and moving around and cracking. So it's like the sensations of coming back alive until it moves up on the surface, and it takes its first deep breath, like a tree, like a deep breath into like the air, but it still continues to grow, and it still stretches. And so, you know, there's a lot of those kind of movements of the body that is like, oh, okay, I'm waking up, you know. Imagine when you just first wake up in the morning, if you stretch, you know, right? In the morning is like, oh, okay, I'm up, and you're stretching and you're doing all these things. So it's very similar. Imagine having been asleep for, let's call it 30 years. And so the body feels tense, the body feels stiff, and so like it has to like do all these kinds of things in order to like stretch and move the energy around. That's the cracking. That's the cracking and the awakening process. And of course, you know, it's at times it doesn't look that pretty. So I was doing that in the video, but it's an idea for you to get that idea, you know. And so what is really doing is like, okay, so I feel very tight here. The energy is very stiff. And so like, what kind of movements can I do? What energy can I move around in order to stretch it and let it go? And then goes the crack. And then, you know, it does it in another way. Sometimes it moves from side to side, right? Or from up and down, because also the pelvic area cracks, which is so super fascinating. When the cracking first started for me was in my arms. And it started more in the wrist. So the wrist will kind of move around, like almost like dancing itself. And then it will continue up in the arm and then the shoulder and moving and expanding. And at times it will do all these funky things, like literally like something else was pulling my shoulder back in order to stretch the shoulder to open up more. And then it will come back and continue to do all these things, you know? It moved from the right into the left and the left doing all these things again. And maybe like both sides were different. I know that both sides in me were different. It started first on the right shoulder for me, and then it will move into the left, and then it will go back into the right and into the left, and etc. So currently there's a lot of cracking that is happening on the left shoulder, about like where the shoulder blade is, but at the same time, the back of the high heart for me, and the left side of the neck. And so the neck was quite fascinating, because the more, and this actually began to happen more when the Kundalini energy moved from the heart to the throat and moved up into the upper chakras. And here, what really happened is that like my neck will do all these motions and sometimes stay like this, as in like kind of stuck, until it will find the pressure necessary to crack, and then it will move. Maybe you heard it because it does happen. And so it's just almost this thing of like having patience, because again, going back into, imagine if you had just woken up after 30 years and how stiff your body will feel like, you know, and maybe you cannot even imagine it, but even having that of like, wow, if you haven't exercised, for example, for 5 years, or you have never exercised ever, or stretch is a good one. If you haven't really stretched at all, and then all of a sudden you go to this yin yoga class, which is all about stretching, and you're like, what? It is very difficult. It's very difficult to breathe. It's very difficult to stay in that pose for like 5 minutes. And then afterwards, it feels great. You know, when you go into Shavasana after stretching and stuff. It's a very similar sensation, but imagine that was just maybe you haven't stretched in 20 years. But imagine the physical body, like having not really be walking up for 40 years. So, and it has to do something, you know? And the thing is that the physical body is super intelligent. Oh my God, I'm getting super excited about this, because I love this part of the awakening process. The physical body is super intelligent, and it knows what it needs to do. And in order for you to really work hand in hand with the physical body, for the physical body to do what it needs to do in order to reawaken itself, it's just stillness, which I know at times it could be challenging, especially if you live in the Americas, you know, in North America, especially, because the life is like go, 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 go. But in those moments where you feel like, for example, some kind of intensity, or you don't even know the emotions are rising up, and then you just lay down. You lay down and let the body do whatever it needs to do, even if it's for 5 minutes. Then at that moment, when you're resting, the energy moves around. So the body, the physical body, has the time to process things and then move energies too. Because otherwise, it's almost like you're working against each other if you're not resting, if you're going on the go, 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 and the physical body needs a space to awaken. Needs the space to go back into its position, you know. And eventually it just comes into a point where there's so much trust, you know, there's so much trust from you with the physical body. Here's a question, you know, like, how is it that you can tune into the physical body? And as the process of awakening, it just happens with time, but it really is about slowing down. And it's really about honoring your body and having different inquiries for yourself. Like, what do you do with your physical body? What do you feed your physical body, right? So are you eating a lot of junk food, or not even junk food? Are you eating a lot of, for example, gluten, and knowing that that really does not work very well with your system? Or are you eating a lot of sugars, and knowing that afterwards you're just totally crashing and not feel very good, you know? Are you drinking a lot of alcohol? It's just like these kinds of questions. And then at the same time, are you overworking your physical body? I used to work out so much. Oh my gosh, I used to work out so much. And I realized that when I got to the point of what I believe it was the most intense part of the awakening process so far, my body couldn't do anything, because I will get into trances after trances, a lot of cracking, a lot of intensity. And then I had no energy whatsoever to exercise, even to practice yoga asana. And I was teaching at the moment in Cusco in Peru. So then all I could do was rest. And then I had to rest. I pretty much rested that entire year and a little bit more. And I lost a lot of muscle, but it was very good. It was very good that I lost a lot of muscle, because the tension was there too in the muscle. So the tension was there, and the body could actually let go of the traumas that had been stored there and rearrange itself. Because what happens is that everything in you during the awakening process, like everything in you, goes back into balance, goes back into its neutral state. And I can tell you about mine. I realize that I believe honestly that it's a miracle that I'm here. And the miracle is the work that I do. Because the moment that I started to go through the awakening process, the Kundalini awakening, the moment that I felt the body move and readjust itself, literally, I felt the vertebrae, my spine, going back into position. So having lived a life of totally harming myself for a really long time, probably since I was 8 years old to like my late 20s, that's 20 years of like totally harming yourself and sabotaging and doing a bunch of things for the physical body. I mean, I didn't even know that was a possibility for the vertebra to go into a different direction, for the sternum to collapse, for the shoulder to be inwards, like to just have such a bad posture. I had such a bad posture. And when that happened, everything began to move. Like literally the readjust of my shoulders, of my hips, and like the spinal column, because that's your foundation. That's your skeleton. That's literally the foundation of your being is your skeleton. And so if the skeleton is all like, hunched in and not like very solid, then of course there's a lot of complications that happen, not just to the organs, but to the energy itself. When the skeleton is strong and really straight, I mean, as straight as it gets anyway, then there's more openness, So see the difference when I'm like this hunching over, and then also when I'm really straight, there's also that presence, the energy of the strength, So this is what happens. And of course, at first it has to move, it has to let go of all these traumas. What I mean about traumas, it's not necessarily something that as adults we see as like, oh my gosh, that was like horrible, but also things that happened to you as a kid, that a kid will see that as very traumatic in comparison to the adults. For example, if you told your kid, or you were told by your parents, like, what do you do and you're being so silly? And for them, it's like they're not placing a traumatic event in you, but for you, it felt very traumatic. Then for you, that could become a trauma. And so like, as the awakening is happening and all these things are surfacing up, so then you can feel more your inner strength, your core, you can feel more the awakening of the body and the connection to different parts of you that are totally multidimensional. The more that all those come out, and when I mean come out, I mean like integrating. It's not that you're like, oh, bye, throwing into the trash. It's like the integration of that, the acceptance of that, the compassion for the self, the love, because that is part of the journey to accept what happened, to love what happened. And at the same time, use those teachings to help you in your current life, in the current like consciousness, the personal consciousness that is happening at that moment in time. So as all those things like come up to the surface and you integrate it, there's more space in the physical body to move and do what it needs to do. The cracking, the cracking. The cracking is the readjustment. The cracking is like the light that enters the body, the light that penetrates from the inside out to make sure that it's like, okay, so there was a lot of, let's say, tension on the right shoulder. And because it has more space, the inner you of the presence of the physical body, it sends its light, its love to the right shoulder so that it can crack. My right shoulder actually just cracked. so this is where the cracking happens. And honestly, it's very fascinating for me. It is kind of weird. It is kind of weird. I'll actually post like I have a little video of my neck cracking, because the first time that I actually watched myself in the mirror as all these things were happening, I was like, wow, that looks really weird. And even people were like, are you okay? What's happening with your neck? And I will just have to explain, Kundalini awakening and all these things. And I'll be like, what? It's actually really fun. I really enjoy this part. I really, really enjoy this part. And then so, this cracking is a readjustment of the body, which is such a gift. It's such a gift. And through this process and working with others, honestly, I've realized that there's nothing that we cannot do. How many doctors could actually say like, oh, the spine doesn't have like, you cannot heal it. It's just how it is. But in my experience, it totally did heal. It totally did heal. So I don't believe there's anything that my body cannot heal. Maybe when I'm like, 40 years older than now, because of course the physical body like begins to go into the state of like returning back to the earth, but at this moment in time and in the past years, that's what has been happening, the healing of it, because there's so much trauma that gets stored in the physical body. Of course, it gets stored in the mental body, the emotional body, and all your bodies in general. It does because everything is related. But because we are in having this human experience in this 3D world, it's more dense in the physical body. So imagine if you were just like caged in for like years and you wanted to get out and you couldn't, because there was so much stuff around you that you couldn't punch through it. So this is a similar sensation of the physical body. So again, going back into the cracking, when it's like waking up is like, oh my gosh, yes, like let me stretch, let me move around. And at times it's not as graceful as that. It really isn't, And so the more that the upper body and literally like the spine continues to readjust itself, it will also happen in the lower body. This is where I went into like the cracking of the pelvic area, which again, going back into like, I've never heard before that somebody can actually heal like the bone structure. And this is where I go to. This is all about the bone structure. And until this happened to me, and I was like, yes, you can. Yes, you can. And it's not just like, okay, wake up your Kundalini energy, but it's all because of love. The awakening process happens because you love yourself, because you're saying yes to you. It doesn't even matter what other people have been telling you, that you're silly or whatever, that doesn't work. Like, you believe in yourself, you're something greater than what you've been playing out to be. And so that opens up the space for you to have this amazing visions and memories and sensations, which it is the beginning of the awakening process. And it could be all the awakening process for you, because not a lot of people, in what I have experienced and seen, go through something similar like I do. Like, I know my awakening has been very, very intense, because this is the life that I was meant to live, the one that I'm living, the one that it is to guide others through their awakening process, to support them. So how could I support others if I go through like just a super gentle awakening process? I wouldn't know how to handle somebody that comes and it's just like the body's doing all these funky things, and I'd be like, I don't know what to do, But because I've had those experiences and I've gone through them, and I learn in the process by listening and paying attention to the wisdom of the physical body and the wisdom of ages, of the ancestors of the earth, then I have a better idea, not to say that I know it all, but because I went through that and I was able to pass through it without really going crazy, if I can be really honest, that opened up the space for me to actually feel comfortable in guiding others. So maybe your awakening process, and maybe the cracking is super gentle for you, or maybe you haven't really experienced yet the cracking, but it is part of it. It's the readjustment of it. So first, like all these things get out of your system as you're integrating, and then there's space for more healing, for a deeper healing. And the skeleton, holy smokes, how amazing is that? How amazing is that? That you can heal it, with love for yourself. So powerful, honestly, so powerful, so powerful. And for me, this has been a gift. This has been a gift. I hear so many people, and I see so many comments in my YouTube channel about like, Kundalini is the devil and whatever. Cool. If it felt like the devil for you, that is your story. And I honor it. And I so honor it. But in my story, it was definitely not the devil. It was divinity, my divinity, helping me through this journey. Through that journey, I experienced so much, and I still experience so much. But it's a gift. I see it as a gift, even with the people that I have worked with and I'm working with. It's such a gift to be able to tune in to your physical body, to be able to tune in to different aspects of yourself, because we are multidimensional beings, which that means is that you can be at many moments all around. So at times when we listen to different things, it could be from a different kind of like lifetime, but it is the gift to have this. And it's a very fascinating gift if you surrender to it. If you really just like dedicate your time to love yourself and slowing down when you need to slow down, and giving the body the time that it needs when it feels tired, or the time that it needs when it's energized, it just needs to move energy around. The time that it needs to feel safe. Just like times, when you're looking for somebody to hold space for you. You want to have that connection with somebody that you feel safe. So then your healing process can like bloom even more. It's very similar with your physical body. It wants to feel safe with you. It wants to know that you'll be able to have its back, even in those moments where there's intensity in some kind of process, and the moments where it's cracking. And that's a space that is beautifully opened because it's you, So the more you open up the space, the more that these things can just come up, and you going back into feeling centered. You going back and feeling like, oh my goodness, like the unconditional love of life is just like, such an amazing space to feel and be. And, at times, who cares if people say, oh, you're being so weird? There's many times, honestly, when my neck cracks right now. It cracks pretty much anywhere, okay? When I'm practicing yoga asana in a room with other people, because I was just like, you want to do this? Okay, I'll let you do it. Who am I to stop the process of my being? This is the thing. Who am I to stop the process of my being? I let it happen. When we go to restaurants, at times it happens. When I'm just talking to my family, it happens. When I'm talking to my boyfriend's family, it happens. When I'm talking to people, it happens. And at times when people haven't seen that, they look at me like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, this is just in a way normality. This kind of happens. And I just let it happen. It honestly, like recently, has been more intense because now the crack is at the back of the head, at the center of the head, and it feels like it's at the center of like within my brain, honestly. And opening up more the ear channels, they're like so balanced right now. It's crazy awesome. Because I will honestly at times I use Q-tips, right? And for the longest time, I couldn't put a Q-tip really into my left ear. And at times it will be different. It will like feel that I could in the left ear and I couldn't on the right ear, or I could on the right ear and not on the left. And now both of them are there. So there's a lot of things that are happening there. So throughout the night, my body wakes up and cracks, and mostly in the neck area, in the left shoulder. There's so much healing that's happening with like the wounded feminine energy on my left, and I let it hold space for it. And it's the gift, it's the gift of this awakening process to just let it happen because it's for you, and it's a part of you, of course. And you will continue to get to know yourself even more, and even just like connect more with your ancestors, connect more with your gifts, connect more with your intuition. It's just like, I win to win situation, honestly. Win to win situation. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. So I would love to know if you're cracking. And how does it feel like for you, and then what do you do about it? And then do you feel like, oh, this is really weird, or for you it's like norm again? Are you in the beginning stages, or you're more in the middle to end stages? And where exactly is happening, and how does it happen, and how do you feel after? Because after it cracks for me, it's like, it feels so good. It feels so good and more open, not so tight. But I invite you that if you are at the beginning stages of this, to see it as a gift, and like really pay attention how you feel through it and after it cracks. And then what happens, do you have some visions, or do you have different sensations? Do you feel more connected with yourself? Has the body and you open up the communication in the way that you actually hear each other? Because that's what's happening. It's so good. You can see how excited I am, because I'm just like, I love talking about this, honestly. I really, really do. And yeah, which it gives me an idea that to open up a group and talk about this, like all of us, So if this resonates with you about the group and then chatting about the awakening process, goodness, send me a message, send me an email. Like I would love to know, and that way I can put it together, because that's like, I'm so intrigued and so in love with the awakening process, because again, I've seen the shift in me and the shift in the people that I have worked with and that I work with right now. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's like a completely different being, but it's still the same person. More integrated, more in love with itself, more empowered, and having that like confidence, the being confidence, not the ego part of it. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. So yeah, let me know. I'll love to get feedback and see if that will work, if people will really be interested in it, because I'm so interested in it. Okay, well, sending you so much love, so much love. May this month of February be the best month yet of your life. Remember, your intention is your access point. So have the intentions for you, and know what is meant to be yours, it will be yours, and it will not go past you. So much love and many blessings. And remember,